Hi there, welcome to the Schwowin's Nest. My name is Sandra and I'm so glad you're here. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, I'd love it if you'd hit that red button and stick around a while. Now let's get crafting. Today's first project is using this chunky pumpkin that I got for $5 at my local Dollarama store. I gave it one good coat of this charcoal chalk paint, set it aside to dry. Now I'm going to be taking some white latex paint. I have not diluted this. I don't have any other medium in there except for the paint. I'm going to be pouring a whole bunch of it in the top here, and then I'm just going to move it around so it starts dripping down the sides. And this is my inspiration. This pumpkin is a large size, approximately as big as the pumpkin I have here. It is a ceramic pumpkin, but it's $100. I think for something that you're going to display probably only for a couple of months, that is just a ridiculous amount of money to spend, especially when you can buy something like this $5 pumpkin, add a little bit of paint and some texture to it, and you've got something that looks really similar. All I did was keep adding more paint so I could get it all the way down the sides. Then I just set it on top of a plastic dish and let it dry. It took a while for it to dry. I did use my blow dryer on it just a little bit to kind of give it a little bit of a coating, like it started to dry on top because it's latex. It was just really weird, but the blow dryer helped it, but it just looks absolutely amazing. I'm going to be showing you everything at the end. I'm going to put everything together in a vignette on my coffee table, so you'll have to stay tuned to the end to see how this pumpkin really turned out. When I was looking through the bags at the Goodwill, look what I found. These awesome gourds. $3.99 for 4 of them, so $1 a piece. I think that's a steal. Let's create some high-end gourds and pumpkins using all of this little assortment from the Dollar Tree, the thrift store, and from Michael's. Here is my inspiration for this look for less. These are $51 for 8 little pumpkins that probably aren't even that big. Let's see if we can beat that price. I mixed up my own green color. It's sort of an olive, kind of a sage color, a little bit deeper, probably not exactly the same as the inspiration, but it was close enough for me. When I paint little things like this and they're styrofoam, I always stab them with a bamboo skewer and it's easier to hold. That white piece of styrofoam that you see at the top of the screen is where I'm going to poke them in so they can dry. To give these pumpkins a little bit more color and dimension, I'm using the stippling brush and some hunter green, just regular acrylic paint. I'm going to just pounce all over these until I get them a little bit darker and you can see a little bit more of, more of a realistic color. When you're done watching my video, do me a favor, head on down to my description box or the first pinned comment, click on that link, and head on over to DIYs with Sonia. Her and I are collaborating to bring you tons of Look for Less inspiration so you can create your fall decor on a budget. To get the effect of the splatters like on the inspiration, I'm using a little bit of paint that has some water in it, and then I'm going to be tapping it onto my pumpkin. I'm going to go quite heavy with this, so probably I think 3 or 4 times I did this, and I did go down the sides just a little bit as well, and I think they turned out really pretty. This color is called Mushroom, and it's the same color that I used to paint the other 2 pumpkins and the other gourd. I'll be doing the same splattering technique on those, but with my original green paint. For this project, I was looking for a terracotta pot that had a little different shape, and these fit the bill perfectly. I wish it would have been just a little bit bigger, but it was really hard for me to leave all these others behind, but I really only needed one. This vase is only 39.95 Canadian, not a huge price, but I still wouldn't pay that when I can buy one for $4 and make it over. The first thing I tried was just using a wet rag and then adding a little bit of the paint color and kind of trying to give it a wash. It worked okay for the bottom, but then when I started adding it to the sides, it just didn't work. It was just too wet, and this rag was not the right type of rag. So I just decided to try something different. I took the brush that still had some of that mushroom colored paint on it, wiped some of the excess away, and then just very gently went over the pot. I'm just starting in sections because at this point, I'm still not 100% sure how I'm going to get that effect, but I did figure it out. So once I had all of this on here, I looked at it and I thought, I've got too many brush strokes. I've got to get that blended in a little bit more. I grabbed the same stippling brush that I had used on the pumpkins. Of course, it's clean and dry now. And I thought I'm just going to drag it across the paint and see if I can blend in some of those brush strokes. I started going on really lightly, but then as I saw how it was turning out, I thought, you know what, I can give it a little bit more pressure. And that's where it starts right here. And just to blend all of those brush strokes away and just give it a really beautiful whitewashed look. To get the line accents that the inspiration piece had, I'm using a small little brush dipped in the same mushroom paint, and then I'm going to use the stippling brush quite heavily to go over the line and blend it out a little bit. I really like how this one turned out, and now I'm kind of disappointed in myself that I didn't grab a couple more of those little terracotta shapes. They were really sweet, but this will have to do.
Here's a look at how I styled all of my projects on this wooden tray on my coffee table. I love how all of these turned out, and I love how full everything is on this tray. I added some hydrangeas from my garden and some faux florals and stems, and I think it's beautiful. Let me know what you think.
This next inspired piece is really fun. It's a large canvas, and of course, I don't have the large canvas that this requires, but for $70, I still don't think I would purchase that. I'm using this 12 by 12 canvas that I picked up at my local dollar store, and I'm just using a craft knife and scoring along the outside of the staples on the back of the canvas, and this way I'll be able to remove the canvas all in one piece. I'm also going to remove all of the staples and any of the leftover canvas that's still on the frame. I'm using the same color parchment to give this canvas one really good coat. I didn't want the white to be so bright, and I really like having sort of an antique white for all of the fall colors. I think it just blends in much better. I created this printable, and I will have this available on my website as a free download. So then I decided to do the pencil transfer method where you scrape the back of the paper with pencil and then you take a pen or another sharp pencil and trace it right on top of the canvas. This turned out really good this time. I know I've had some experiences where this doesn't transfer very well, but on the canvas it was perfect. I like to use a different colored pen. This one actually is a red pen because then I can see where I went over the letter and if I missed any of the spots. When you're creating a printable like this for this purpose, it's a good idea to bold the text and make sure that it's as thick as you can get it. It makes it so much easier for tracing. I'm using a black Sharpie marker, but this one is specifically for construction workers, so it has the ability to write on just about everything. Most of the time, with regular Sharpie markers, you end up not being able to use all of the ink because when you're putting it on a painted surface, it usually clogs up the tip. Not so with these. I found them at my local Home Depot, and I believe they are the Milwaukee brand. I got 5 in a pack. I'm just going to continue to trace my letters first and then just fill them in with the marker. When you're doing this project, feel free to trace out the pumpkin shape too. I decided to try to do it freehand. A pumpkin is probably one of the easiest shapes to create. It's basically a circle or oval in the center and some banana shapes on either side. I'm going to start painting the pumpkin with a small brush and my favorite fall color, which is called honey brown, and it's by Americana. Once I've completed that part, I'm going to use some different colors to create some shaded lines and make the pumpkin look more 3D. I'll use some parchment and then I'll also use some of my antiquing wax and a little bit of black just to bring out the dimension of the pumpkin. Basically, what I do is just work with the orange color and the white color and just keep blending until I get the look that I'm going for. If you're not comfortable drawing your own pumpkin, you can definitely just print off the printable that I've created with some tissue paper or a napkin and use decoupage to put it on your canvas. For the final touch, I used the black marker again to create the stem, and now I'm just taking the marker and making some lines just to accentuate the curves of the pumpkin. I place the frame on top of the canvas and then I'm using some hot glue to attach the frame to the canvas this way. Then I'll use my utility knife to cut off all of the excess canvas around the edge of the frame. I think this picture would look amazing in a larger size, but I just don't have the space in my home for it. Let me know what you think of this project. These stoneware plates are from Pottery Barn, and for the set of 4, they're $70. They are just like salad plates. What I'm going to do is just take some of those clear plates that you can get from the Dollar Tree and use some of these printables on tissue paper and decoupage them onto the plates. I got these images from Creative Fabrica, and I will have a link to them down in my description box. This one came just as is, but the other one you can see to the left of the screen is something that I put together using some of their clip art pieces. I'm using Mod Podge because that's the decoupage medium I have, but you could use anything that you have at home. Make sure you don't have any chunks in yours. I just picked one out of there and give it a really nice thin coat, and you want it to be fairly even coat as well. Then I'll be taking my image and putting it face down onto the plate. I like to use my fingers to gently rub the paper right into the Mod Podge, pat it down a little bit, and then I'm going to just lift the tissue paper from the ends and add more Mod Podge until I've covered the complete plate all the way around. Because the plate is round and it also has some angles on the bottom of the plate, it's going to have a little bit of wrinkling, but once you flip the plate over, you won't even notice that. I let the plates dry overnight, and now I'm taking the parchment chalk paint and I'm going to give it one coat on the back, which is right on top of the tissue paper. What I want to do is be able to have all of the colors pop and make this look more like a stoneware dish than glass. These turned out absolutely gorgeous, and I can't wait to use them for entertaining at Thanksgiving. I love to use signs that are already been used. This one had, I think it was a truck on it at one point, glued at the top. I'm going to just give it a good sanding and then I'll give it another coat of paint. This time for the fall, I like to use more of an off-white color, kind of creamy. I think it blends well with the tones of pumpkins. So I'm going to give it one coat of parchment chalk paint. I already have an idea of what I want to paint in my head. But if you wanted to get some inspiration online, or maybe you have a book, you can definitely just have something sitting in front of you and look off of that. I'm going to be creating a taller pumpkin in the center and then two more fatter and squatter pumpkins on each side. The first thing I'm going to do is take a small artist brush using my favorite fall color, which is called Honey Brown from Americana. And if I can find it on Amazon, I'll leave a link for you down in my description box. I'm going to just outline this first taller pumpkin with the orange color. I love this color because it is literally a brown with a little bit of honey in it, and it lends itself to a really nice rustic color rather than the bright orange that you normally see. Once you have the outline done, then you're going to start blending the original color. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm not going to be adding too much more paint to my brush. I just want to make this line a little bit thicker and actually kind of diffuse the original break of the line. It's kind of hard to describe, but when I go over it this way, you can see that the original line is kind of going to disappear for my first circle, and that's what I want to achieve. The next thing I'm going to be doing is grabbing this little Dixie cup and adding a little spritz of water in there because I want to be able to dilute the color and get it more of a blend and softer towards the center. So that's what I'm going to be doing here now. It looks like I'm adding more of the darker paint, but I'm actually just blending it out a little bit so it doesn't have so many harsh lines and so it doesn't look like there's an actual brush stroke creating a circle. What's happening here now is that the water is activating the chalk paint a little bit, the parchment color underneath, and I'm pulling some of that onto my brush, which was kind of a happy accident. I really didn't plan for it. I did have the parchment ready to go because I was going to be adding some of that anyway, but this just helps to blend everything together, and you can see the dark shading on the outside and it getting gradually lighter on the inside. Now, one thing to remember is when you're painting a pumpkin, something that you want to have dimension to, you want it to look 3D. So what I'm doing with my brush here is going around in sort of an ovally circle because I want those brush strokes, when you see them, to show that there is some dimension to this pumpkin. And you can actually see that already now. I've dipped my brush again into the paint, but very lightly, and now it's time to start painting in the grooves of the pumpkin, and that's where it's going to start taking shape. So every pumpkin has a little bit of the bumps and lines to it, but even just adding that little bit of an oval right into the center just brings it to life. And again, I'll be taking my brush and just blending out those lines just a little bit. I don't want them too prominent and too stark. I dipped my paintbrush very lightly into the paint again, and I'm just giving it a little bit more dimension in the center here. Now I've dipped my brush into some antiquing wax and I'm using the same brush and I'm not cleaning it in between. And this is just going to add another dimension of color. And I'm going to be doing all the way around the outside and then just making the grooves of those pumpkins look a little bit more distinct. And it also kind of makes it look like they're a little dirty, which is really fun because I mean, pumpkins are never clean when they come from the field, right? I'm using the antiquing wax again, and now I'm going to be drawing the stem. The stems of the pumpkins are always kind of wonky, and that's where the little vine tendril ends up being. So I'm just going to be creating my little pumpkin stem just with the antiquing wax for now. And I'm just going to kind of leave it that way. I thought it was really nice. I'm going to be coming back to it after and adding a little bit more details to it. But for right now, I just wanted to get a little bit of a stem going. And I think this looks absolutely gorgeous. For my second pumpkin, I am deciding to go with sort of a sage green color. I just think like green gourds and stuff are just so much fun and they just look really neat. So I'm going to just continue with this one. I'm going to use the same techniques with different shading, with watering it down a little bit, and then adding some of the antiquing wax.
Rustic wood signs are usually quite expensive on different websites. This one was about $40 US, and that's a lot of money to spend on something that you're only going to be using for a short time in the year. So if you have the ability, then why not create one yourself?
Our hearts beat to the city streets. We began to feel the fire. We rise like...
Now that all three of my pumpkins are completed, I'm going to do some letters just using a black Sharpie marker. I did pencil them out and they're just going to be simple, plain, just up and down. This is something that anybody can do. If you're concerned about making sure that they're all the same height, you can use some painter's tape at the top and at the bottom. I'll be doing that with the next word. I'm just going to be writing in hello at the top and then pumpkin down the side. For the word pumpkin, I'm putting it down the side this way. I just thought it would be a little unique and a little quirky. Some fun stuff to do, right? So I did use a piece of washi tape to make sure that my letters are going to be all the same size at the bottom and nice and straight. And now I'm just using the Sharpie marker again, and I'm going to do the same thing, just outlining my letter thickness and then filling it in. And you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, I prefer it if it's not perfect. But if you are someone who needs things to be perfectly rounded and centered, then you might need to use a Cricut machine or maybe a stencil or some stenciling letters that you find. So you do you and work out whatever works for you best. Always like to add a little bit of something extra to the letters. So you can see that I had already done that on the word hello. And all I'm doing is drawing a little line on the left side of each of the letters just to give it a little bit more character. And again, to make it look a little bit more unique and high end. This next project is using a piece of 1-inch pine. I cut this from a larger piece and I'm just going to be hand drawing a pumpkin. And then I'm going to grab my trusty jigsaw one more time and cut it out. If you're not comfortable hand drawing your pumpkin, you can definitely print something off and then just trace around it. I've got my favorite clamps holding this down on a table, and now I'm just grabbing my jigsaw and I'm going to let it do all the work. You don't have to push very hard, you just have to guide it along.
This is my inspiration. I found this beautiful white distressed rustic pumpkin tray on Etsy and it was $72.
For the pumpkin, I'm using the slot screwdriver again and just making some scoring lines to make the pumpkin look like it has the ribs in it. And these turned out really fun, and I love how the texture of them is. They're kind of rough and rustic and natural because that's kind of what you see in real life anyway. Again, I'm grabbing my palm sander and I'm going to give the edges and all of the top a little bit of a sanding just to clean it up. To make the pumpkin look a little different, I went back to my signature white. This is just, again, a latex paint. I buy this off the shelf at Walmart, and sometimes I add some talc to it to make it a little bit more opaque, like a chalk paint, but most of the time I just use it as is right out of the can. Once everything was dry, I just took a brush and dipped it in the antiquing wax, and I'm just going to do some distressing around the edges a little bit, and then I'm going to grab a smaller brush and go into those little areas that I carved out and just make it look a little bit more dimensional. After this part, I ended up using the small brush and going a little bit around the edges of the pumpkin and the acorn as well with a smaller brush and just giving it a little bit of shading. I think they turned out really good. While I was cutting pieces of wood at my miter saw, I did a few extra so I could use them as feet for the pumpkin and acorn. So I decided to make risers out of them. Since both of these are raw wood, hot glue works fine and creates a permanent bond. Thanks so much for spending some of your time with me today. I truly appreciate it. If you like these projects, make sure you check out all of my other fall projects too. I'll leave a link here to my playlist. Bye for now.